Hey tea heads, this is Nong from Mei Leaf. In this video, 10-step tea tasting. In this video, I'm going to be presenting to you my methods for really experiencing the tea in 10 steps. This video is going to go under the Tea Masterclasses and the Drinking with Friends playlists. If at any point in time you enjoy this video, then please give the video the thumbs up. The more thumbs in the air, the more tea videos are going to come your way. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, then go click that button. I'm here with my sister Lizelle. Say hello.
Hello.
And what I wanted to do today, after many requests, is to explain to you guys out there how I assess a tea. I'm not going to be talking about specific quality markers of a particular tea, but I'm going to give you my 10 steps that I go through whenever I do a tea tasting. So whenever I first get to experience a tea, if I really want to delve into understanding how I feel about that tea, I go through a protocol of 10 steps. Now, everyone's different. Everyone will taste tea differently. Everyone will have their own methods. And I'm not trying to say that this is how you need to do it. But I find that if you have a process or a protocol that you remember, then you don't forget any of those steps, and you actually get so much more enjoyment out of the tea because you really get to experience everything about the tea. So we're going to go through those 10 steps, and I'm going to ask you to basically make the assessment on this tea.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
As I said, everyone's different, and you know, it's funny because I write all these tasting notes and they're quite personal and quite detailed. And I don't expect you guys out there to necessarily have exactly the same reaction, or you to have exactly the same reaction to me, because tasting is personal and it should be personal. It's so hardwired to your memories, to your experiences, all of those things. How you feel about a particular flavor is, you know, different from different people. But I personally think that keeping it personal means that the experience is your experience. So, you know, it's better for you to not think in generic terms, but really try and focus in on the detail of what this tea means to you, even if it sounds pretentious or absurd to other people.
Okay.
Right? Okay, so here we go. The 10 steps to tea tasting. Number 1 is eyes dry leaf, which means what does the dry leaf look like? Okay, so you're looking things like shape, you're looking at things like color, you're looking at things like, you know, yeah, you can bring it to the camera, bring it very close up. So you want to look at the color, you want to look at the shape, you want to look at the texture, all of those things. The more you can delve into the detail, the more you're going to experience the tea. So, what do you think?
It's a long leaf.
Long leaf, yeah.
It's a long leaf. It is quite twisted. Mm-hmm. So it's twisted and dry, obviously. Yeah. It's kind of like a deep purpley sort of colour.
Yeah.
Almost looks like quite earthy and sort of like an onyx sort of, you know, that black, deep black sort of greeny black stone. Mm-hmm.
So it's an oolong tea. So the great thing about when you do this is that what you end up doing is actually describing a lot of the processing. So this is larger leaf. Oolong tea is larger leaf. So you're basically talking about the picking process there. What did they pick? Then the color reflects how it was processed. If it was roasted, it's going to go darker. If it's fermented, it's going to go darker. So therefore you can just assess by the color. I agree with you. I think this is a kind of purpley black, brown, those kind of slightly plummy, you know, it's got all of those
it's almost
tones.
Got like a grey hue.
Yeah. Almost metallic,
yeah,
almost
metallic.
like a metallic hue, right? Yeah. So again, that comes from the roast usually. When it's roasted, it tends to have a more matte finish to it, like a slight kind of matte metallic finish to it. So all of those things you write down. It's good to have a notebook with you. First step, eyes dry leaf. So just looking at the leaf, you can spend as long as you want doing that, and just trying to always, with everything we do here, it's about not just saying it's brown, but actually try to really go into the next step. What kind of brown? You know, is it a fruit brown? Is it a metal brown? Is it, you know, you need to kind of try to keep moving, because if you do that and you train yourself to do that, then this kind of tasting will become much easier for you. You'll start to find descriptors much more easily. If you stop and you're a bit lazy with your mind and you stop at just kind of brown, then you're never going to move forward. Okay, so the next step, so that was the first. The next step is the smell of the dry leaf. But don't smell dry leaf that's not warm, because you're not going to get the aromatics. So the next thing to do is to take hot water and put it into your, don't spill it on your phone, put it into your teaware, warm up your teaware, pour it away. Now if you put the leaf into there and then put the lid on. Okay, so now what we want to do is bring that to your nose, bring this whole guy one to your nose. And
the actual lid or the whole?
You can bring the whole guy one now because it's not steaming, so you can smell directly the leaf. So now smell directly the leaf. So you're going to get so much more, right? You get a lot more aroma out of it than just smelling the dry leaf cold. Okay, so let's see. What kind of aroma notes are you picking up from it?
I'm sort of like a plummy jam.
Okay.
Plummy jam. Honey.
Honey.
Honey. Like a deep sort of like a nice sort of rich, deep coloured honey, like a dark honey.
Right. So you're thinking stewed fruits. What kind of jam are you talking about?
Quince and
okay.
Foresty sort of.
Forest fruits?
Forest fruits and plum and quince.
Okay, so it's got a slight bitterness, are you saying? When you were talking about quince, are you thinking that slight astringency of a quince?
Yes.
Okay. Anything else? Also, don't be afraid to pick up notes that are non-food related. You know,
I'm just thinking of forests. I just feel like I'm in a forest.
Okay. So forest fruits, honey.
And also that earthy, musty forest sort of smell.
So a bit kind of...
like a damp forest.
Wet wood.
Yeah, a damp, wet wood sort of forest.
Okay.
Yeah.
As I said, don't be afraid to also think of non-food things. Like a lot of people don't want to say things like rubber or leather, or I'm not saying that this necessarily has it, or vinyl, or those kind of notes, because again, these are all descriptors, for things that it doesn't have to always be food related. And I have to say, this is where the Guy One really comes to its own, because you can see how wide that surface area. You can see my sister is.
What is Guy One?
This is the Guy One. This is the teaware Guy One, and it has such a large surface area for you to stick your nose in that it's very different from a pot like this, right? Where you kind of don't have as much room to get in. That one is it's a lot better because it's wide. You can really stick your nose in. I have to say also that tea tasting, you need to do it with close friends, or you need to do it by yourself, because you are going to be sticking your nose in. And you can't get too precious about that.
So I'm seeing a place.
Okay.
Is that a way of doing it? Just imagining a place?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Visuals that way? I'm just seeing lots of dark, earthy, plummy, deep greens, damp wood, sort of dark forest.
Right. See, that's really, really good. Thank you, because that's another thing. A lot of people focus on foods, and a lot of people think about things that are non-visual or non-emotional. But you want to form a connection with this tea. So there's no problem in you starting to bring in memories. Some people talk about their grandma's flat or their attic, or what I mean, and so you start to build up a personal connection with the tea, and that's what you want to do. You want that personal connection with the tea. You want not to describe what the tea is, but what the tea is for you, right? That's the key. So you're kind of noticing dark woods.
How it makes you feel.
How
where
it makes
it
you feel.
transports you.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got 100-degree water. The next step, so we've done eyes dry leaf and nose dry leaf. The next step is to get the smell of the wet leaf, right? So this is perfect for doing it after you've done your tea rinse. So we're going to rinse this out. Okay. And now you want to smell the lid, because if you smell the leaf, you're getting a nose full of steam. Once the lid is off, then you leave it for a bit, then you can go into the leaf. So go ahead.
First thing is the lid.
Yeah,
then.
First is the lid. So go and smell the lid. And try to notice how different the dry is to the wet, if you're noticing anything different in the smell. Or if it's exactly the same.
No, it's not the same. It feels suddenly like, it's like lighter, like vanilla, like something's lifted. I'm still in the forest, but it's more sort of like dewy and sort of feels like the morning, like
Right.
light.
So
sounds
the
really
water
pretentious.
that no don't. This is what I really want to try and get across to people, because a lot of people have kind of, they read my tasting notes and they say, oh, you it's a bit flowery. But I personally think that is the wonderful thing. It's not about being pretentious. It's about being honest about it. You've noticed the hydrating factor of it. So there is water now in this, right? So it's natural that it's going to be brighter. Tends to be that the dry leaf is more kind of the darker, muted, creamy notes of a tea. And then when you put the water in, you get like the fruit goes from a plummy jam to maybe more like a ripe plum. Do you know what I mean? It starts to hydrate.
It starts to lift.
So have another sniff, see if you pick up anything else.
I just think of honey. Like the honey's really coming out now.
Okay.
It feels much...
We forgot to mention what tea this is. This tea is Xiang Dansong, or Royal Peach Orchid, but the classic name for it is honey orchid.
Oh, is it?
So the notes that you're describing are pretty well documented for this tea, honey orchid.
Yeah, I'm definitely smelling sort of like...
Are you getting some of those flowers as well, or is it no?
No.
Okay.
I'm smelling more vanilla.
Okay, yeah.
Vanilla's coming quite strongly, and
Forest honey, vanilla. What about the other thing that people talk about this tea is sweet potato. That kind of slightly starchy sweet potato smell. Or
I mean,
more
look,
in
if
the
you
taste.
tell me I can smell it, but I don't. It's not the first thing that comes to my mind when I smell it.
Okay.
I'm being told a description,
Yeah.
and I guess how much of it, when you buy a tea and you read a description, are you influenced by that? And should you actually even read that?
That is a really key question, actually. And whenever I do tea tastings with people, not on YouTube, because on YouTube we've got a limited time, factor here. I can't sit and wait for too long. But whenever I do tea tastings in public, I try not to speak, because if I do, it's very easy to influence people into what they should smell and taste. That's not to say it's not true, right? It's not to say that you're fabricating something. But often the process of tasting is actually getting your first impression first, getting your personal notes down, because you don't want any influence there. And then afterwards having discussions with people and asking the question, like, does it smell of coffee? And then smell it. Go for it. Does it smell of coffee?
No.
Right. So asking the question and then answering is a part of the tasting process.
But it's kind of like when you drink wine.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
have that same conversation.
Exactly. So some people might say, does it smell of sweet potato, or does it taste of sweet potato? And then you're focusing on sweet potato, and if it naturally does, you will pick it up. If it doesn't, you won't. So it's not about fabricating. But there is an influence, of course. And that's the joy of drinking in a session with people, is that everyone can contribute their own flavour notes to it and tasting notes. Okay, we're ready to move on to the next stage?
So this is number 4.
So we've done eyes dry leaf, nose wet leaf, right? The next step is to do the brew. We're going to brew this for about 20 seconds. And the next step is to assess the colour of the liquor. Now, of course, this will change with each infusion. So, you can, if you want to be very geeky about it, you can assess the colour of each infusion differently. But I tend to do this just once.
And it also depends on how much is in there.
Yeah, it's a good point. So this is 7.5 grams of Xiang Dansong in a 150 ml Gai 1.
See, that's the colour of the honey. That deep coloured honey I was talking about.
Yeah. Let's show the viewers out there. Hope it's
has that deep golden sort of rich sort of meadow honey.
Yeah.
Sort of.
It's got a real golden.
I should say forest honey.
Forest honey,
forest
yeah,
honey,
exactly.
not meadow, forest.
Because meadow honey is lighter, right?
Yeah,
Forest honey's got that darker note. So isn't it?
I'm interested to know if it's got the same sort of like weight. Like when something's a bit sort of
honeyed, like
honey, and it's just in its weight, it's silky and kind of almost, that got that sort of smooth, silky taste to it.
Okay, well, that's actually the next stage. So we've done the 4th stage, which is eyes liquor. So nose dry leaf, nose wet leaf.
Assessing the colour.
Eyes dry leaf, nose wet, and eyes liquor. So now you're looking at the liquor colour. and I agree with you, a kind of honey. But I also notice a slight pinky hue to it. Slight.
Yeah.
You know, there's a slight pinkness to it. A slight kind of rosy gold kind of.
Rose gold.
Yeah.
It's like a rose gold. Do you, because you know how in wines you always do that to sort of check the viscosity of the...
It's
do you do that
less
with
of
tea?
a thing with tea. It's less of a thing with tea. Normally what you notice with tea is if you pour it and bubbles form and they really stay and they don't pop, then you know it's a thicker tea, generally, because the bubbles don't pop. But anyway, now, we're intentionally going to pour into these long glasses, so you've got nice nose to put to experience. The next thing we want to do is the feel. So try to not think about taste at all. Just focus on texture. Okay. And when I say texture, I mean the texture while the tea is in your mouth, not the finish, right?
Okay.
The texture in your mouth. How thick it is, how you know, how thin it is, how thick it is, if it's got...
quite thick and syrupy.
Right.
Thick, syrupy, quite smooth and glossy kind of texture.
But notice that the finish is different,
I'm
yes?
not thinking about the finish.
Right, exactly. So that's why it's important to separate the two out.
It has a honey texture to it, actually.
Yeah.
It actually has a texture that how it looks.
Yeah. It's got that real syrupy, nice, thick, syrupy texture. I love this tea because of that. It's got that real syrupy texture. Okay, so that was the... Is it the fifth one? I'm losing
That's the
count.
fifth.
Okay, so now sixth is the taste. So finally we're at the point of what does it taste like? Now when you're doing tea tasting, what I tend to recommend is keeping the tea in your mouth and breathing out through your nose. So put it in your mouth, move it around, cover your mouth with it, breathe out through your nose so you're passing all the volatile aromatics through your nose and you're getting a really full, rich sensation of the tea.
It's quite hard to do that.
Yeah, it's a bit of a skill.
It's actually a little bit strange for me to taste the tea after I've thought about the texture of it.
Okay.
It's almost like the first time it hits the tongue is almost lost because I've done that with the texture.
Okay.
Versus actually
you could do it the other way around. You could do it the other way around.
I prefer to do a taste first and have that first reaction in my mouth.
I find personally for me, if I focus on the taste too early, then I forget to assess it. And then once the texture's like, I'm used to the texture in my mouth, it's hard for me then to go back and go, was that thick? Was it syrupy? Was it not? So that's why I do it that way around, but this is totally personal. So what kind of flavours are we getting? Breathe out through your nose, even after you've swallowed.
It's tasting actually a lot more floral than it did.
So you're noticing the orchid.
I'm noticing the orchids in there, yeah. Honey, orchid, bit more peachy actually, rather than plummy. How it looked.
Stone fruits are basically
yeah.
that kind
It's
of stone
feeling
fruit.
more summery than it did before. Feels like it's almost blossomed from being in the autumn, the damp, to suddenly...
Well, think about what's actually happened.
You know, and it suddenly now feels like I'm in springtime.
You've hydrated the leaf.
Yeah.
You've brightened it, right?
It feels much brighter, less of a sort of dark
So
tone.
I get those notes as well. I get peach, I get honey, and I get orchid. Those are the predominant...
It's quite an uplifting tasting tea rather than something that brings you down and sort of grounds you.
Yeah.
It's actually more sort of a lifting tea.
Yeah. So let's brew it again.
Do you ever look at the leaf once it's been
Yeah.
brewed and look what's happened to it?
Yeah, that's later on.
Okay.
So we're on our sixth step, and what the key here is that we're 6 steps in, and then we're focusing on taste. Most people just brew tea and then they taste it and they go, what does it taste like? And you've kind of, for me, you've missed out on so much potential enjoyment, right? And if you follow this protocol or this system, or you adapt this system for yourself, you're going to get so much more enjoyment out of the tea because you're reminding yourself that you should be smelling the dry leaf. You should be smelling the wet leaf. You should be thinking about the texture. All of those things adds enjoyment, adds to your arsenal of descriptors. So a lot of people ask me, how do you come up with all those terms and things like that? It's just this. It's simply this. It's like nothing special. It's just practice and forcing yourself to go through the process. Look at that colour.
It's still extremely...
Yeah.
Deep
Second
and- yeah.
infusion. Still got that
So-
rose gold honey look to it.
So it's almost like the tea reveals itself when you add the water. So you're almost examining the tea beforehand, discovering it for what it is, and then adding the water, and then it reveals. Do you know what I'm saying? And
Well, the whole processing of tea, actually, right, is actually, once it's picked, is the removal of water in a controlled way with withering and all the processing, but it's the removal of water, right?
Yeah.
So when you're actually bringing it back to life with water,
Yeah.
essentially you're reversing that process. But it's nice to experience that reversal from dry to wet rather than
Yes.
just brewing it and tasting it.
Yeah.
So let's see.
So
if
this
we-
is we're still on the.
We're still on
steps.
taste because
So you
taste.
taste different infusions. It's all part of the same.
So at this point, you would have lots of infusions. You'd taste the infusions. You'd go through 5, 6, 7 infusions of this tea.
And the tea usually evolves through different infusions.
Absolutely. As the water enters the leaf and the leaf starts to open up, you'll start to notice different things. So the minerality of this tea will start to express itself a little bit more. You'll start to notice the greenness of the tea. The kind of slight bitterness and astringency of the tea as it starts to kind of evolve and open up. So this is the pleasure of Gongfu style brewing.
It is becoming more summery.
Yeah.
It feels like it's really going through
Moving
the
from
seasons.
autumn to spring. Yeah.
Oh, it's gone through spring. I feel it's going into summer now.
Okay. So now it's in
It
the
feels
summer.
much more ripe. I am
Really?
tasting the greenness. I'm tasting the. You know what I'm saying? It feels a
Yeah.
lot more just sort of like it's in full bloom.
Yeah. You're getting
Makes
that
sense.
grassy cut grass kind of greenness, the fruit, the honey, the
And
slight sweet
and
potato.
also all the florals are really coming out now.
Yeah.
Even more so.
Okay. So that is the 6th step. Mouth, taste. The 7th step is the smell of the empty cup, right? So have a normally you would do this after 5 or 6 infusions, but you can still do it now. Stick your nose into the empty cup and have a smell. I know it's quite subtle, but try to focus in. Because the minerality of the leaves really coats the cup, the glass, and you end up getting a smell. This is less so for green teas, even though you can pick it up, but certainly for oolongs and darker teas, it tends to lay down more minerals. And it would be richer.
And it's nectar. Just thinking nectar.
Right. So is it becoming fresher or is it becoming more honeyed?
Becoming more honeyed.
Right. So for me, the smell of the empty cup always brings it to a warmer territory. I start to smell oats. I start to smell...
Feels like it's going back to...
Yeah, but in a different way.
Yeah.
I don't smell fruit. For me, I smell kind of oat cookies and
cinnamon.
cinnamon and a bit more of the spices. What you're doing is experiencing just what the minerality has left behind, as opposed to the liquor. And it always tends to be warmer, more caramelly, more oaty,
Amber.
Yeah.
Sort of... Yeah, I can smell the oat cookies and...
Yeah, like raisin oat cookies and just all of those slightly warmer, sweeter notes to it. Yeah? And this is a key quality marker as well, especially for dansongs or for oolongs in general and pu'er teas. The older the tea trees and the better the terroir that this was grown in, the more minerality it has, and therefore you'll notice it in the cup. So actually, one of the key quality markers when I'm tasting tea, let's say I'm going to a tea farm and I'm tasting lots of teas, I'll smell the empty cup. I may really enjoy the taste, but I don't have the chance to taste lots of infusions. But if I smell the empty cup after 1 or 2 infusions and I can smell that and I can smell something, then I know, without having to go through 6 infusions, that tea leaf has a lot of minerality. So it's a really good shortcut quality marker for testing teas. Smell the empty cup.
So high minerality is a sign of a better quality tea?
Yeah, because high minerality means it was probably slower growing. Because when a leaf is slower growing, the plant pumps it full of minerality, right? It's slow, right? It's not growing too quickly. So that means it was probably picked in spring after the dormant period, after the winter where it's had a lot of time, or it comes from high altitude where it's lower temperature, or it's older tea trees, or it's grown in better soil. because it's got more minerality. So the smell of the empty cup is your little tip, is your little secret way of assessing really quickly how good the tea is in terms of quality, especially for these
So
oolongs.
usually are they more expensive teas than the ones that have taken longer to grow, that have had more time?
Of course. Less volume, isn't it? You can't produce as much. It's prized stuff. Or if it's an older tea tree, it just grows slowly, because older tea trees, they've already established themselves. They don't need to grow so quickly. They're not in competition. They've already got deep roots. They're established, right? So they grow slower. It means you've got more minerality. And you will notice that in the flavour over 5-6 infusions, how long it lasts, in other words. Because some teas are really great the first infusion, but after the third infusion, it's just finished. It's fallen off a cliff, because it didn't have that minerality. But if you don't have the time to do that for lots of teas, the smell of the empty cup is your shortcut. Okay? So,
That's so interesting.
we'll do one more brew of this.
And can you just smell that instead?
Yeah, of course.
No.
No. Because it will still have that smell. It's not going to be the same
Or
thing.
the lid.
No, it's not going to have the same thing. You either do it with the cup or you do it with the gong dao bei.
Okay.
One or the other. And that's why I
That
love
still
using...
smells
yeah,
now.
exactly. It still holds it. Exactly. That's the key. With a poorer quality oolong, that you may get the first infusions tasting the same, this would be completely neutral. But now you still smell that honey, oat, honey, you know, those kind of notes.
That's amazing.
Okay. One more infusion of this, although we'll, I'm sure, drink more afterwards. And we're going to move on to the next stage, which is the finish. Okay, so this is the eighth step. The eighth step is the finish in your mouth. So how does it make you feel? You can, just like wine, is it very drying? Is it, you know, lubricating?
But
You know,
why did you put the finish before the smelling of the cup? I mean, after the smelling of the cup.
for this reason, because if you wait until you've done 7 or 8 infusions of this, before you do that, the cup will probably have some minerality. You want to assess the quality of it. You want to assess it after 2 or 3 infusions to see how much. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like but you can do it all the time. All of these are interchangeable, of course. You can look at the leaf, and you know, I'm just going through the process. And the other reason is you want to drink quite a few to assess the finish, because the finish again is about how much minerality is left in the throat and on the sides of your tongue and all of those things. So, you know, that's something that you shouldn't assess just after a couple of infusions. You should do a good 3-4 infusions before you can get a good idea.
How many infusions should you get out of a really good quality tea? Like, say, something that's...
Depends on the tea, but for this one, I would say you want to be getting at least 8 infusions out of it. At least. Probably more, closer to 10. But, you know, 8 infusions, 8 good infusions. So, the other thing is with finish is that if you may notice that the finish is very dry or is slightly astringent, but it's also about how that transforms. So the astringency can dry your mouth, and then it stimulates saliva production, and so it becomes quite juicy and sweet in your mouth
This
afterwards.
has got a juicy... This feels quite juicy.
Right. But it is quite drying when you swallow, don't you find? When you swallow, it has that puckering, drying effect, and then the juice comes out afterwards.
But the sides of the tongue don't feel dry.
Yeah.
Only the back of the throat.
Exactly, right? The sides of the tongue are really stimulated and
Yes.
juicy,
Yeah.
right? Like fruity, juicy, kind of zesty,
Yeah.
like almost like you've taken peel, like zest of a fruit. And the back of the tongue and the throat has a slight clenching, has a slight clenching, drying sensation.
But
You
that
know?
is particular to this tea?
Dansongs are very well known for that. Anything that's grown around rocks that has that extra minerality will have that that drying sensation in the throat. Some people find that they don't like dansongs for that reason. They find it's too
Do
astringent
you know
on the
how
throat.
with wine you have that tannic taste at the back? Mm-hmm. Is it similar to that?
It's exactly the same.
Oh, okay.
It's exactly the same. It's minerality and tannins.
Are there teas that actually just leave that dry taste where it doesn't have this juicy? Because now you got this dryness, but then this juiciness is sort of like just coming
Follows
after
it,
follows
yeah.
it, so you don't feel like you're left.
So
with-
this for me is another quality marker of tea. If a tea dries and doesn't release, I don't like that. I personally don't like those teas. I think that they are giving you no transformation. It's the transformation that I enjoy. From bitter to sweet, from dry to juicy. That's something that I find really pleasurable about tea. What's nice about the drying sensation is it makes you go back for more tea, right? Because you feel like you need to constantly drink more. But you want, at the end, for the saliva to come back, right? For that juiciness to come back. So how would you describe, we've described it, I guess, so dry to juicy finish.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so that was the 8th.
And it's lingering. It's a lingering finish. It's not like a short sort
Yeah.
of, you know,
It has length.
length, yeah.
So, and again, that's another really key quality marker of teas, is the finish. So all of this relates to, once again, how fast the leaf was growing. Because if it's really rich in those minerals, really rich in those nutrients and minerals, it will have this very physical effect that will last a long time. And what will happen with the dansong is you'll notice for an hour or two afterwards, you still have this tingling sensation on the sides of your tongue, because the minerals are laid there just in the same way that they've been laid down on the empty cup. The 9th step is analysing the dry leaf. So we're going back to looking at the dry leaf. Obviously, it's going to look very different from the wet leaf. Obviously, the wet leaf is going to look very different from the dry leaf. And maybe what we'll do is we'll just take some of them out. If you put some of them out in here, that way we can look at them a little bit more carefully. Okay, so now it's just a visual thing. You know, you can see that they've started to open up. They're still slightly twisted, right? And that to me shows that this still has a lot of life still left in it. Because once it's opened up completely, then it's like, okay, the water has fully hydrated it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? So you've still got a lot of bruise in this because it's still twisted and, you know. But what would you say is the colour?
It's lightened to more of a sort of yellowy, ambery colour. Mm-hmm. Feels fresher, more grassy.
So it's got more of the greens coming out.
Yes.
It's like khaki kind of green colour.
Yes, greens.
Still get little bits of purple, little touches of purple, little touches of brown and amber.
It's got definitely more of an amber hue to it. Touches of purple. It's slightly sort of...
It's actually quite more multicoloured than the dry leaf suggested, would you not say?
Yes.
You start to see more different hues and shades in the wet, hydrated leaf. And again, you can look at the quality of the leaf. So you can say, okay, what is it? This is where you get a link directly back to the farm. You can start to open them up. You can if you were looking at white tea, you could look at the thickness of the buds. You're looking at this tea, you're looking at how oxidized it is. You're looking at the edges, whether or not it was bruised or whether or not it was damaged along the way. You can see that these are pretty nice, full, medium to large leaves with that kind of khaki, I would say slight tones of artichoke. You know how artichoke has those little tones of purple, but then a dark green, those kind of tones to them.
So you're always looking for whole leaves as best as possible in a tea.
Yeah.
Rather than ones which are a bit sort of...
Yeah, because broken leaf means more surface area. More surface area means it's going to extract a lot quicker. When it extracts quicker, it's going to be harder to get a more balanced, tasty brew out of.
Because these are pretty intact. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
Yeah. And this is something that people don't do enough of, is they kind of throw the leaves away. But look at the leaves. As I say, it really is your way of getting in direct contact with the farmer, in essence.
How old would this tea be?
This is spring 2016, so this is just under a year old.
So really old tea, would you still be able to open up and see the leaf?
Mm-hmm. If it's fermented, it starts to break down. But if it's just aged, it will still hold. Yeah.
So how old? I mean, we're talking about
decades. You can store tea,
and so you'll still be able to open up and see that leaf.
Mm-hmm. But it will have changed colour. It will have changed colour as it ages. It changes colour. Yeah.
Becomes what, darker?
Becomes darker.
So you can tell the age of the tea just by looking at the leaves, if you're a real expert?
No, because you don't know how roasted it was in the first place. So you've got no starting point to guess. Unless it's a pu'er and you know that it starts green, you can then assess the age just through the colour. Okay, the last step, the 10th step to my 10 tea tasting protocol is the sensation. Now, this is something that you really need to sit with the tea for an hour, drinking it, experiencing it, enjoying the flavour, and then afterwards you will notice, is it making you feel more energetic? Is it making you feel more relaxed? Is it making you feel a bit sweaty and, that tingling sensation of kind of, sweat? Is it making you feel a bit high, a bit tea drunk? All of those things. I don't really expect you to pick up on that.
Well, I feel a bit high right now.
In what way?
I feel quite lightheaded and sort of happy and lightheaded.
Yeah, well, so do I.
And quite energized.
Right, and I'm starting to feel a little tingle, like a tingle of like when sweat starts to form. When you're starting to sweat, that little kind of nice, refreshing tingle of sweat forming. A little bit high. I feel like a little bit more energetic. Dansongs are nice teas because they give you that lift. They're not going to get you really tea drunk like a pu'er will. So they're more controllable, but there's certainly quite a lot of strength in this tea, right?
And it's still really tingling on the tongue.
So all of those factors, again, are your way of assessing quality. Because if you find that a tea tastes good after one infusion, but then loses it and doesn't give you much of a feeling, then you're kind of knowing that it's not really rich in those nutrients. It's not really rich in that minerality. The tingling of the tongue, the length of the finish, the smell in the empty cup, how it makes you feel, all of these things are key to assessing the quality of the tea.
Fascinating.
So those are your 10 steps to tea tasting. This is what I do with every single tea. And if you go to our website, you will see that every single tea that we have has my 10-step tea tasting so that you can read along and compare. Remember, it's not about getting the same as me. It's personal. It's your experience, and it needs to be your experience, not mine. Recap on the 10. The first is looking at the dry leaf. The second is smelling the dry leaf. The third is smelling the wet leaf. The fourth is looking at the liquor. The fifth is the texture of the tea. The sixth is the taste of the tea. The seventh is the smell of the empty cup. The eighth is the finish in terms of how it makes your mouth feel. The ninth is the look of the wet leaf. And the 10th is the body sensation, how it makes you feel. Those are your 10 steps. If you kind of focus in every time you want to do a serious tasting and focus on those 10 steps, I guarantee you will have a much richer tea experience. No? Don't you feel you understand this tea a lot more?
I do. It feels like I've formed a little relationship with it now.
Exactly. And that's the point. You want that relationship. That's it, tea heads. If you made it to the end of this video, then please give the video the thumbs up, check out our YouTube playlist and let us know if there are any videos that you would like us to make. If you're ever in London, then come visit us in Camden to say hi and to taste our wares. If you have any questions or comments, then please fire them over. Other than that, this is Lizelle. I am Don from Mei Leaf. Thank you for being a part of the revelation of true tea. Stay away from the tea bags. Keep drinking the good stuff and spread the word because nobody deserves bad tea. Bye.
Bye.